Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts has made her first visit to Iowa as a likely presidential candidate. Warren announced this week that she formed a presidential exploratory committee. Her visit to Iowa this weekend gives her a head start as the first to begin organizing in a Democratic field that's expected to include more than a dozen possible candidates.
Here to discuss the week's events in Washington, Iowa, and everything else is Gabe Debenedetti, national correspondent for New York Magazine. Gabe, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's start with the shutdown. Is there any hint that this impasse we could break it?
Nope. Next question. To make a long story short, the two sides are talking about different things here, and neither side has a real incentive to cave. We think that this is going to end basically when the president decides that he has the win here, when he says, well, there's a wall now, or I have funding for a wall. But because they're not actually talking about the same thing, the Democrats and the president, and what that would actually look like, we don't know when that's going to end.
But Gabe, you and I were talking before the show. This affects a lot of people, and that means there are a lot of people right now not getting paychecks. So at what point does it reach that moment of we now have to actually come to an agreement?
That's a great question. And it does seem like Democrats have said basically like on this one, we're actually not going to budge at all because there's no political incentive for them to do so. But there will be more and more pressure on the president, particularly as more and more things get shut down in the government itself. So we'll see. But we think most of the political pressure will be on his end. And it's going to be when he decides he can declare victory.
And so it could be down to the wording of Democrats saying we are not giving you a wall. So it's not listed in there. You get your border security funding, and the president can say, look, I can use that money for a wall.
Yeah, something like that. Basically, the president has changed his wording a few times when he's talking about the wall, a fence, steel slats, security. He uses a bunch of different phrases here. So at some point, a lot of people in Washington think he will decide, I will say that what I've got here on the table is a wall, and that's good enough.
Some see that as a concession, though. Some simply do.
Yes, absolutely. And there are a lot of people in the president's base, particularly conservative commentators, who have gone after him in the past when he's said things like this. So that's what he needs to be wary of.
Let's talk about the Democrats. We've seen a massive power shift here, at least in the House. The big question, what is going on the impeachment front? Are they really going to lay in?
Well, I think what you see right now is Democrats trying to inch around this conversation with the words of Congresswoman Tlaib that obviously became much more of a national issue that Democrats were prepared for. But the Democrats in leadership have basically said, listen, we're going to take this slowly. We're going to lay the groundwork, and this is going to be a long process. But some of them quietly behind the scenes will say, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world to have some of our more outspoken members out there talking about this to rile up the base, as long as that's not the official party line.
As we just saw, Elizabeth Warren is already in Iowa, and every sort of political season seems to start earlier and earlier. This is as wide open as a Democratic presidential election has ever been, isn't it?
Yeah, that's something like that. You know, jockeying for this basically started the day after the last election behind the scenes, but now it's finally bursting into the open. My current list of people who are looking at running is well over 20, reaching 30. It's been longer than that. It's getting smaller as we get closer, but likely going to have upwards of 20 people announcing a lot probably in the coming days and weeks as 2019 gets a little bit older. But Warren coming out strong. She's the first one with, the first big name potential candidate to hit Iowa. And a lot of people in the Democratic Party were watching very closely last night.
You know, one of the other things that Mueller mentioned in his report, that 6-month extension for the Mueller, for the grand jury, what might we expect to see in the coming weeks in this Mueller investigation, especially with the shift of power in the House now as well? Yeah,
well, you know, the Democrats have basically said, the Democrats leading the House investigations, they've said, let's let Mueller do what he's going to do. We'll hand him, whatever we can, whatever information Republicans were stopping from getting to him before. But we don't know, of course, what Mueller is going to do. We never really know what he's going to do and when. But there have been some indications that he's going to start being a little bit more active again now that we're in the new year. So maybe we'll start hearing a little bit more about some reports coming from him, but maybe not.
All right. Gabe Debenedetti, the best answer. No.
Nope.
Very short.
I think it was
sweet.
nope.
No, it was nope.
It was
Gabe,
nope.
Gabe, thank you.
Thank you.